I don't think that many of us realize strength and the power of the negative beliefs that we have literally taken on like normal from our society, from our religious upbringings. And so I want to keep asking you to share your story. I'm going to keep sharing my story because the more we tell our stories, the more clear it will become that something is deeply wrong and that there is great solutions for us as a human race, as a humanity to move forward. I actually remember the moment I stopped being afraid of myself, afraid of the devil, afraid of God, being God fearing. I remember that moment and I want to tell you that story. Welcome, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Spiritual Rebel podcast, where I just want to open up the conversation about how can we be better humans? How can we evolve together spiritually? How can we break down the separation between different religions like, Muslim or Hindu or Christian or Buddhist or whatever and come together spiritually? Yes, but not just by, agreeing that we're all human and so we should tolerate each other and get along. I think that is awesome, but I also think that there is room for spiritual development. Yes. And you can see that by observing what's going on in the world, the conversations that we're still having at this point in time. We have incredible progress in so many different things on planet Earth, but humans still are shooting at each other. They're still killing each other. They're still causing harm, violence, and pain to each other. They're still taking resources like food and water and electricity and manipulating so that only a few get to live with these privileges while there are many that still don't have access to simple human dignity. So these thoughts about what's going on here on planet Earth have sort of led me to start to think about what would it take for a human race, our human race, this human race, to evolve to the next level of our evolution, where we're able to literally start growing and evolving in a way that we haven't until now. And I feel that that way is through our spiritual development. I feel that the way forward is through acknowledging what hasn't worked for us and what we could be doing differently so that we can create different results. Now, some of these teachings are steeped in so much fear. What would it take for us to evolve? It would take some people becoming fiercely courageous to start sharing their personal story. My personal story was about a transformation that happened to me. Until the age of 22, I had no idea how steeped in guilt, shame, fear, doubt, complete lack of trust, separation from my divine self I was living. I had no idea how deeply entrenched I was in negative thinking, negative feeling, confusion, hating myself, hating others, judging myself, judging others. I was lost, meaning I couldn't even sit with myself for 5 or 10 minutes and look inside. Like the concept of that would have been completely alien to me. I would need to always be looking outside. Yes. So if my eyes were open, if I was awake, the idea of closing my eyes and going inside was not even an option. I needed to be looking outside because I was always feeling the need to protect myself. I was always looking for things that were going to maybe harm me or people that might try to harm me. I don't think that many of us realize strength and the power of the negative beliefs that we have literally taken on like normal from our society, from our religious upbringings. And so I want to keep asking you to share your story. I'm going to keep sharing my story because the more we tell our stories, the more clear it will become that something is deeply wrong and that there is great solutions for us as a human race, as a humanity to move forward. So in my case, deeply asleep up till the age of 22. And by stroke of luck, one could maybe call it, I took a decision to go to India. I had no idea about meditation. I had no idea about personal growth. I had no idea about working on myself. But I took that decision because honestly, I was broken and it just sounded like a good idea when the person who suggested it to me suggested it, right? I was like, I don't really have anything to lose. At that point, I was 22. I was divorced. I was already a divorcee. I had left Zimbabwe to pursue my dreams as a chef, and I was on my way to Miami. When I deviated, was I went to meet this guy, and he was an Italian guy. I met him in Milan on my way to Miami, and he was into meditation. I remember seeing him meditate on many occasions, but I had no clue what he was doing because it was not part of anything that I knew about, right? I was not reading about it. I was not investigating it. And so when I met up with Claudio, that was his name, he said to me, listen, you are a hot mess. You need to go and work on yourself. And I highly recommend you to go to India. And he gave me the spot, he gave me the address, and he told me somehow I had the wisdom to listen. And I decided, why not? I literally bought a one-way ticket. Back in those days, you could still enter countries with a one-way ticket. Okay. So I got on one-way ticket and jumped on a plane. And I remember arriving in India. And the first night I was kissed by a rat. I kid you not. Okay. I was taken to this divey hotel from the taxi driver. And it was in the middle of the night. I'd arrived late and he took me to this dingy hotel and I was sleeping. And then I felt something crawling on me and I grabbed the something and threw it across the room and at the same time reached for the light and I heard this thing thump on the wall and I turned the light on and I saw this rat running to some hole. Where did it come from? I obviously screamed. Back then, if you knew me, I was scared of everything. I was so full of fear. Fear was my default setting, right? So I'm not surprised I created this situation because, I was afraid of rats. I was afraid of spiders. I was afraid of frogs, snakes, anything that creeps and crawls. I wouldn't say I'm not afraid anymore, but it has gone down a lot compared to the almost phobic nature of my fear back then. So didn't sleep a wink that night. And as soon as there was even a slight bit of light outside, I checked out of that hotel. So I get there and they had this thing that they called a white robe brotherhood, where you would have to wear white robe and enter into a big space. It was like a tent, and there were like at least 1,000 people there. Now, you've got to remember, I've not done any meditation. I have no clue about anything to do with personal growth. But I'm sitting there again, full of fear. Who are these people? What is going on here? This looks weird. They're dancing, they're playing music, they're meditating. Some people are meditating, some people are moving their hair in to wild music. They're shouting out the name of the teacher. Some people are dancing with each other, staring in each other's eyes. So I'm in a completely different world. First of all, India is one of my favorite places on planet Earth. I love, love, love that country. I love many countries and I love humans. And that is why I love doing the work that I do. So, yeah, I'm sitting there completely skeptical, wondering what the freak is going on here. The teacher had already passed away. So basically, a screen comes down and they're watching this guy on a video. They're watching a video, huge screen. And then the guy starts speaking and he is saying things. He is looking in a way, his vibe, his voice, and the energy shifted for me from skeptical and worried to curious and awakened. And just like that, I started receiving the words that this gentleman had to say straight into my heart. And I started to relax and I started to breathe and I started to be a part of that quantum field that those thousand people were creating, a energy field of pure energy that allowed me to slip effortlessly into connection with my divine self. For the first time in my adult life, I felt peace, meaning that my mind literally stopped jumping, running, and dancing all over the place. And I felt deep quietness come into my mind. And that quietness in my mind translated into a very light and warm, powerful feeling of safety and grounding in my emotional body. So my emotions were usually all over the place. But on that day, I was able to connect to a deep freedom. It was freedom, lightness. I wasn't thinking anymore. And so my emotions weren't dancing all over the place. And this feeling was so beautiful. It caused me to close my eyes, even though I didn't know how to meditate. It caused me to experience oneness consciousness, even though I didn't really know what that was. It caused me to feel like my heart was open and I was at complete resonance with myself and the world around me. I could hear his voice gently speaking these wonderful teachings. I could hear the birds chirping in the trees around. I could smell the jasmine flowers that were dropping off the trees. I could experience myself present in the moment. At that time, I didn't know what was happening to me, but I knew that it felt delicious and divine. And I sat there and I sat there and I sat there. And before I knew what had happened, I opened my eyes and the hall that had had 1,000 people in it was empty. And I had been sitting there for hours. I know it sounds like a crazy story, but I kid you not, this is a true story. I'd been sitting there for at least 90 minutes after the session had ended. And so I'd altogether been sitting there for about 4 hours. I'd never even been able to sit still for 4 or 5 minutes. So this was an awakening. This was a breakthrough. This was a what the freak just happened to me, and how can I get more of this? So that was the first day. So I went back to my hotel room and literally just collapsed in exhaustion in my bed. The next day, I woke up, and the first thing I thought about was to meditate. Even though I didn't know anything about meditation, even though I had no clue, I wanted to feel that feeling. So I checked in. I remember sitting up in my bed, 22 years old, closing my eyes and looking, is it still there? Do I still feel this warmth? Do I still feel this oneness? Do I still feel this place of safety in myself? And it was there. And so I sat for another 2 hours, just like that. And that became my routine. Every day I started to sit. I sat for 2 hours in the morning and go to the ashram and meditate over there. And then I come back in the evening and I'd sit for another 1, 2 hours. And then I would start the whole cycle again. And after about 6 months of being with this teacher that passed away, I decided I wanted to go and find a teacher that was in his body because I needed to know more about this enlightenment. I felt enlightened. I felt elevated like I'd never been in my life. For the first time, guilt and shame weren't my default setting. I was able to laugh, to dance, to feel parts of me that I didn't even know existed. Like I didn't know that it was possible for the adult version of me. Even though I was a young adult, I'd already lost all of that bubbliness and that childlike presence and enjoyment. I was already jaded. I was already fully brainwashed into thinking life is miserable, 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 and then you die. Yeah, I kid you not, guys. That was literally what I was thinking. That's how life is. Because honestly, that's what I'd seen around me. I had no other evidence of anything else from my family, beautiful people as they are, they live in victim mindset. And victim mindset is we are persecuted by the government, by the society. We're poor. We're poor because the government is fucking up. We're poor because that person isn't doing whatever. So it's never about can I interact with the world in a way that would allow me to create something that I can't even imagine right now. Do I have any power or influence over my life and the results that I'm creating? Yes, you were taught to, you know, be concerned about what other people were thinking. Be a good girl. Yeah. Be nice to everybody. Be kind. Yeah. So you were always put under a lot of pressure to show up as a good person and a good girl. But because there were never really any examples, and I'm not saying that the people around me weren't good people. I'm saying that the thoughts and the conditioning around me was about suffering and pain, anger, anger at the government, which they had the right to be, and I understand it. Anger at each other, the amount of inner family dynamics of pointing and hating and jealousy and aggravation against each other was strong. And, I had had this experience that transcended everything I'd been taught about what was possible for me. And in that one meditation, I turned on a light. And I remember that after being around 3 months or so with this new guru, the one that was live in his body, I remember the moment where I decided I have nothing to fear. Fear is a construct of my mind repeating and repeating and repeating a negative story that I have chosen to believe. That's all it is. Yes. So that I didn't need to be afraid of the devil, afraid of ghosts, afraid of spirits, afraid of being attacked, afraid of men, afraid of not having enough money, afraid of not getting the job that I wanted, afraid of this, afraid of that, right? So I'm 23, 22, 23. Yes. I remember feeling this depth of connection to my spiritual self where all the fear was gone. Only love remained. And the thought that of fear was like a wave that came back into the ocean, and I was the ocean, and the fear dissolved and disappeared. And I remember I was not able to sleep with the light off at night because I was so afraid of the unknown and what could come at me spiritually, spirits and ghosts and whatever, by devils, and that I couldn't even sleep with all the lights off. And I was a 23-year-old woman who always needed a light on. And I remember the moment where I got out of bed and I turned that light off. And for the first time in my adult life, in my life, I sat in the dark and I felt safe and I felt loved and I felt protected and I felt warm and I felt free and I could relax and be me. What a moment. And that moment opened up a portal to a deeper understanding of what fear is. Yeah. An external idea that has been given to us. Yes. From our culture, from our religion, from our society, that leads us to feel guilt, to feel shame, to feel more concern about trying to protect something, to stay good, to stay safe, as opposed to leaning into the divinity, the love, the light. And that is why I'm so passionate about the work that I do, because I want other people to experience what I have been experiencing over 30 years, 3 decades, right? I have been experiencing deeper and deeper connection to my divine self, which gives pure freedom, which has allowed me to create a life I could only dream about. I couldn't, quite honestly, I wouldn't even be able to dream this because of the narrow minded thinking that I had before my deep spiritual awakening. Now, I'm passionate about taking Eastern philosophy and mixing it with Western ideas and making mix of ideas that form a new way for humanity to activate our unconditional love, our inner wisdom, and our spiritual selves. Nothing gives me more pleasure than to create a space for people to have the experience that I had of an awakening into their deeper self and their deeper truth. Now, that awakening was the beginning of this wonderful journey that has had its ups and downs, twists and turns, and all kinds of miracles and nightmares have happened. Okay. But honestly, if I think about the last 30 years, I can't really tell you anything really bad that has happened to me. I feel like a red carpet has been put out and I can just walk on this path. Have I had disappointments? Have I had deaths? Have I had things happen to me that weren't optimal? Yes, but I understood from that young age something very profound and very deep, which is that we came into this world with nothing and we're going to leave with nothing. And that moment of leaving this body could happen at any second. And once you deeply understand this, you understand your reason to be, your spiritual existence. You're willing to dig in there and look and find and sit in that part of you that will continue after this body has stopped existing. Yes, where did we come from? Where are we going to? A lot of us are in the delusion that this world is everything, right? And that we are everything and eternal. So we waste a lot of time. Once you understand who you truly are, you stop wasting time. You don't need to keep grasping for external things. You look inside and you find the nourishment, you find the love, you find the grounding, you find the peace, you find yourself. And in this finding of yourself, your compassion for yourself and others goes up, 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 up. The idea that there is anything on this planet that isn't perfect as it is, like that we need to attack others and we need to kill others and we need to grasp and make sure that we control. This all disappears, and you understand that your nature is love, your nature is loving, and you want to support and find peaceful solutions to move forward. I want you to ask yourself the question, have you looked deeply enough into yourself to understand beyond what your society has told you, or even your religion, or even your teachers, to really understand who you are and what is the point of your existence here on planet Earth? This is a journey that nobody can make for you. It is a journey that you need to make for yourself. And you can only do it when you feel, when you're ready, when the teachers will come. Like for some of you, I am your teacher, and I'm that person that's coming into your life to help you, to support you into that deeper relationship with yourself. The same way there were teachers that were there for me, that came into my life to wake me up, to support me, to hold a space for me to go inside. So honor the moment when you come and find something more in your heart. The moment when you awaken to a deeper truth, nurture that knowing, nurture that awakening. Surround yourself with people that can help you deepen that connection, because there is nothing more valuable in life than knowing who you are, knowing how to close your eyes, go within, and stop all the, let's call it madness of the external world that keeps pushing you to not enoughness, that keeps pushing you to guilt, to shame, and to fear, and to be able to turn that off and feel expansiveness, feel light, feel love, feel whole and complete. It's your birthright, and you are worthy of knowing that deeper. Please share this podcast with anyone who needs to hear this. Your story matters, and your voice matters. And I'm going to continue sharing my story and my voice for anybody who needs that as an inspiration to maybe think about how you want to change your life and get yourself onto the track that you need to be in order to have a remarkably beautiful relationship with yourself, so that you can interact with this world from a completely different way. This is Mahima with the Spiritual Rebel Podcast. Another episode just dropped down, and I hope you guys loved it. I loved sharing my story with you today, and I can't wait to share more next time. Share with me your story in the comments. I want to hear, when was the moment you let fear go? I want to hear if you're still living in fear and you're still looking to ignite that moment. Let's move forward together. Love, love, love. Mwah. Bye, everyone.